This car here may not look like much, but I think this is going to be one of the most prominent EVs in Malaysia for at least the next couple of years. This is the all-new BYD Atto 2, the brand's cheapest, most affordable EV in Malaysia, priced at exactly 100,000 ringgit. Beyond that, I also think this is going to be the toughest competition for both the upcoming Proton eMas 5 and even Perodua's EV model. So while we wait for those two, let's see how good this one is right now, whether it can or should be your first EV. Let's go. First things first, let's talk about pricing. The fact that this car over here is at 100,000 ringgit is purely just a formality. That is the absolute floor price, the cheapest price any fully imported CBU EV can be sold here in Malaysia. So BYD has actually priced this as low, as cheaply as it possibly can. But of course, BYD has sort of sidestepped by offering discounts for this car right from the very start. Right now, you can get an early bird package worth up to 13,000 ringgit for a brand new Atto 2, and that sort of brings the price down technically to about 85,000 ringgit. So this clearly is the cheapest, most affordable EV you can buy, or at least you should consider here in Malaysia, like I said before. There are of course other heavily discounted EVs like say the Neta V and the Dongfeng Box, but let's limit our conversation to just EVs coming from say more reputable brands for now. This being priced at about 85,000 ringgit right now also means that both the Proton eMas 5 and the Perodua EV better be priced a lot lower still. If any of them comes close to say 80,000 ringgit, you might as well get this one right here. Now, the 13,000 ringgit early bird offer for the Atto 2 isn't a straight up discount. It is technically marketed as a 6 months free installment package plus a free wall box for your home as well. But that package value is only going to grow and grow over the next years. We all know how this game works by now. Plus, BYD Malaysia is also offering something a little bit extra, something that goes well above and beyond what other EV car makers have offered here in Malaysia. For those of you who are living in condos or apartments where you can't have access to home charging, BYD Malaysia is offering a door-to-door charging service, as in they'll actually come up right to your house to charge your car up to 4 times a month. On top of that, they'll even wash your car up to twice a month, plus an EV rescue service just in case your EV runs out of juice up to 2 times a year. Like I said, this is well above and beyond what other EV car brands have ever offered here in Malaysia, so I think that is a fantastic initiative by BYD Malaysia. Now let's move on to the car itself. This is marketed as a compact electric SUV, slotting in right under the Atto 3, hence the Atto 2 name. But here in Malaysia, it also undercuts the smaller BYD Dolphin, which technically is still on sale right now, though you'll find very limited stocks available still. But you know what? Let's be honest, most new customers will likely go for this instead of the Dolphin anyway, seeing that this is quite a bit cheaper than a much smaller hatchback. As a Dolphin owner myself who paid full price 125,000 just 2 years ago, I am terribly jealous of this new model right here. Size-wise, it is obviously slightly smaller than the Atto 3, but not by much. Even though this doesn't really look like a large SUV, dimensions-wise, it's actually very close to the Proton X50, so it's not tiny by any means. On to styling, the Atto 2 gets a very simple, slightly boring design even by BYD standards. The headlights are full LED projectors and it does get a strip of LED DRLs down the bottom, but this is not connected down the center like in both the Dolphin and Atto 3. Here it gets a much simpler silver strip instead. On the sides over here, you do get sort of air curtain intakes to aid aerodynamics, which is pretty neat for a car on the lower end of the price range like this one. Onto the side, it gets rather chunky looking body claddings all around, which sort of makes the tyres look a bit undersized. Now, thankfully, here in Malaysia, we get the larger set of 17-inch wheels instead of the 16s we saw in Thailand, which are terribly tiny. On the other hand, however, the tyres that we actually get here are these Westlake, which doesn't give me a lot of confidence. More on that later, of course. But let me tell you that this very car in most of Europe gets a set of Hankook Ion EV instead. That would have been much better than what we get over here. The A-pillars are painted in black to give it a bit of a floating roof effect from front to back. What I don't like though, this car only has a single keyless entry button on the driver's door. This is similar to what you'd find on more budget-oriented cars like Peroduas, instead of having it on both sides like in most other cars. Making things worse, this car also doesn't have any form of a proximity sensor to the keyless entry system, so you really have to rely on that single button right there. To be fair, BYD also offers other ways to lock or unlock the car, either by using an NFC card or using a digital key via your smartphone. But both of those methods require you to tap the side mirror over here, again only available on one side. The digital key system also doesn't turn your phone into an active key fob like in a few other cars like say a Tesla. At the back, again, this is a very safe, unadventurous design. This is definitely not the most striking looking electric SUV by any measure. Having said that, I do like the full width LED taillights with the helix design at the corners, and also the updated BYD logo back here instead of writing "Build Your Dreams" in full like in older models. Plus, the model badge down here only says Atto 2 instead of including the brand name in front as well like in other models, which I've always found to be a little bit redundant. Moving on inside, again, it's a very safe and simple design, especially if you're comparing it to the truly wild interiors we've seen from BYD before. But for a more budget-oriented offering, simple isn't a bad thing. I think it's a really good cabin for this price. You do get a lot of the usual BYD bits and pieces here in the interior. For instance, this 13-inch screen is exactly the same as you'd find in a Dolphin and earlier versions of the Atto 3 before it got upgraded to the bigger screen. This screen, as usual, can be rotated between a landscape and a portrait orientation, but this will be among the very last models to offer this feature because among its customers, BYD figured out that none of us actually use this feature at all. Like I mentioned, I've had my Dolphin for about 2 years now, and I've only ever used it about one time just to make sure it worked and never again after that. It doesn't help that features like Apple CarPlay only ever works in the landscape orientation. You turn on CarPlay and it automatically rotates the screen like so. Both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are available in either wired or wireless connections, and the sound quality through the 8-speaker system is surprisingly quite good. It's way better than what I've had in my Dolphin. What's also improved is the build quality, or at least its perceived build quality compared to the Dolphin. The entire top of the dashboard is now covered in nice and soft materials, and even as you get down here, it's all nice soft leather as well. This is as opposed to the hard and scratchy plastics you'd find in the Dolphin, which, if you'll remember, was priced even higher than this one way back then. Another common complaint leveled at both the Dolphin and the Atto 3 back then is the use of a really small digital meter cluster up front. Here, that's been fixed as well. You get a much wider screen. This is very similar to what you'd find on the more upscale BYD models like the Seal and the Sea Lion 7. The one thing I don't really like about this cabin is the more boring design of the steering wheel. This looks closer to the even more budget-oriented BYD M6 in my opinion. One thing to note is that we are getting the absolute latest version of the Atto 2 here in Malaysia. You may have seen photos of an earlier version of this model having a center gear knob down the middle over here. What we're getting instead over here is a column mounted shifter on the right side, and this clears up even more space in the middle right here. You now have a wireless charger on the left side and another space to have a second phone and a strip of buttons in the middle here. Right down the center is a push start button, which you are not going to use a lot because this car will automatically turn on or off as you get in and out of the car. Very neat. And what I really like is the use of a physical volume knob down here. Speaking of physical controls, there's hardly any in this car, and as usual, you control all the air conditioning functions via the center screen. But even then, BYD has made it a lot simpler for either the driver or the front passenger to do so, because they've introduced something called blind controls. Like so, you're driving, paying full attention to the front without having to look for any tiny buttons on the screen. You can just reach out with 3 fingers and swipe left or right to control the fan, or up and down to control the temperature. This is really convenient, way better than having to find tiny icons on the screen. Plus, if you really don't want to control the air conditioning via the center screen, you can adjust both the fan and temperature using buttons on the steering wheel as well. That's pretty neat too. Beyond the practical bits, I've got to mention that the front seats are really comfortable as well. If you've ever sat in a BYD, you'll know how comfortable their seats are. They're soft, fairly supportive, and it's also power adjustable. And despite this looking like a soft-roader or a city SUV, you actually sit pretty high up here, like almost in a proper SUV. You get a very good view out, and failing that, you can rely on the 360-degree camera, which is also very sharp on this car. Now, one thing this car does not have compared to most other EVs out there in Malaysia is a sunroof. To me, that's not a big loss at all, but a lot of people do think that is an important feature, so that's something you need to consider as well. Another thing this car lacks is the built-in dashcam, which again is a bit of a shame. Now, in my Dolphin, I just bought it online and installed it myself. Very easy, cost me about 200-300 ringgit. Very easy to install as well. I'm not sure if it's the exact same one, but yeah, I'm sure it's easy to find out online as well. Moving on to the back here, space is excellent for a compact SUV. Legroom is very generous and headroom is good as well. I am only 167 centimeters tall, but even if you are 6 feet, even taller than that, you should fit in the back here very comfortably, much more so than you would in the far smaller Dolphin and the Proton eMas 5. If you're planning to fit 3 in the back here, this is a better place to be as well, because you have a center headrest, which the Proton lacks. If you're planning for just 2, you also have a fold-down center armrest with an extra pair of cup holders back here. What's not so good is the fact that the floor is placed slightly high, so sitting up straight, my knees up in the air, my thighs are hanging off as well, so this is not very comfortable for longer journeys. But at the very least, the backrest is set at a very nice angle, and even though you can't recline it further, this is a decent sitting position for an SUV like this. Down the middle over here, you do get a rear aircon vent, which is an upgrade over the older Dolphin. But I mention vent as in singular because there is just one vent back here, so rear passengers can only be cooled down one at a time. Further down, you've got a pair of USB chargers, one USB-A and one USB-C, so everyone's covered. Plus, you also have a lot of pockets behind the 2 front seats. That's a nice touch as well. Beyond that, the rear door cards are all hard compared to the soft ones in front. That's normal for this kind of price class. And with this full black upholstery cabin and headliner, it can feel a little bit dark back here. But at the very least, the windows are quite large, so it should be fine even for those with claustrophobia. One last thing before we drive off, this car does not get a power boot function, which is a bit of a shame considering the upcoming Proton eMas 5 will have that feature. Usually, I don't think having a power boot is all that essential, but on this car in particular, the tailgate is actually pretty heavy. So smaller, more petite ladies may have some trouble pulling it down. If there is a car that would really benefit from having a power boot, it's this one right here. The boot itself isn't too bad, however. At first glance, you may think it's a little bit shallow, but you can just as easily drop down the floor to get a much deeper load bay over here. BYD claims a cargo room of about 400 litres, making it far more practical than both the eMas 5 and the older Dolphin hatchback. But on the other hand, it does not have a frunk, which the Proton will have. On the move with the BYD Atto 2, let's talk about all the important numbers. First, this has a single electric motor up front powering the front wheels for a front wheel drive layout. Here it makes 177 PS and 290 Newton meters of torque. That last number is very important because that is nearly double what the top version of the Proton eMas 5 will offer. That is only 150 Newton meters. The Atto 2 will get from 0 to 100 in 7.9 seconds. That is hardly quick anymore by EV standards, but remember that is likely already quicker than your existing petrol car. This to me already feels quicker than say a Honda HR-V with a 1.5 litre turbo engine. It feels especially quick or especially electric at lower speeds. As you are coming off from a stop, this feels immediate. The torque transfer is really quick. Much quicker than a petrol engine that needs to transfer its power from the engine to the transmission through the wheels and so on. Here is nearly immediate. One short stab and off you go. But having said that, BYD has always had a bit of a conservative approach when it comes to power delivery. It's nowhere near as quick or as sharp as most other EV makers. You press it now, there is a bit of a gap before the car starts moving, and even at full throttle, the immediate surge isn't quite as big as other EV makers. To me, that is a good thing because when you drive it out in the real world, having a softer throttle response, yep, it's more pleasant. It's less intrusive to the driver and especially other passengers. What's even more important to potential customers is this car's range. Now, thankfully, BYD has seen it fit to install a slightly larger battery for export markets. So here in Malaysia, we are getting a 51 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is slightly bigger than the 45 kilowatt hour battery pack available in the long range version of the Atto 2 or the Yuan Up in China. With this bigger battery, BYD claims an NEDC range of 410 kilometers or a more accurate WLTP range of 350 kilometers. Having tested it over a week though, I think its efficiency is even better than that. Through normal roads, my regular driving pattern, I average just 13.0 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So even if I take a conservative figure of 48 kilowatt hours that's actually usable within the battery compared to 51 and divide it by my average, I get a real world theoretical range of about 370 kilometers. That's even higher than the WLTP claimed range. As you drive more aggressively or perhaps at a higher speed, the average number will go up to about 13.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. But even then, that will still match its 350 kilometer claimed range. I also took a trip to KLIA to see how this will do on a long distance highway drives, and the average went up to about 14.5 kilowatt hours per 100, and that will still give it a long distance range of about 325 kilometers out in the real world in Malaysia, keeping up with traffic and so on. That to me, given this car's affordable price, is entirely acceptable. Impressive even, because the level of efficiency over here is way better than what we've previously seen in older BYD models. This is now as good as the Proton eMas 7 in terms of efficiency. That's the thing with EVs, newer models will always be better than the previous ones because this is still a maturing technology, so the leaps of advances is still pretty steep. The car that you can buy 2 years later will be much better than the car you can buy today. But now let's move on to charging, where the Atto 2 becomes slightly less impressive. This only has a 7 kilowatt single phase OBC, so charging from 10% to 100% at home with a wall charger will take slightly below 8 hours. That is a long time. But then again, because the battery is fairly small to begin with, just 51 kilowatt hours, upping that to an 11 kilowatt charger, that will only save you about 1 or 2 hours. The difference isn't really all that big. The more crucial number is its DC fast charging maximum rate, and here it takes up to 82 kilowatts in terms of DC. BYD claims that this can go from 30 to 80% SOC in as low as 28 minutes. That may sound impressive until you see the fine print. That is from 30 to 80 instead of the more industry standard 10 to 80%. To do that, this car will take closer to 45 minutes, and even after that, this will only give you a range of under 300 kilometers at 80%. So as a long distance car, it's not quite there yet, but as a city car, I think this is absolutely fantastic. Now let's move on to ride and handling, where traditionally BYD hasn't been very good, let's just put it as that. But here though, it's really impressive again. Now this is far more composed than say both the Dolphin and the Atto 2 that came before. It's just as comfortable as those two cars, but the body control is way better. In the Dolphin and the Atto 3, the suspension setup very clearly favors comfort over anything else. But show it a pair of corners and the car will float about, it will lean quite a bit. It doesn't give the driver any confidence at all from behind the wheel. This one is a whole different story. Like I said, it is just as comfortable. It does seem like it favors comfort as well as you drive it slowly in town and on straight roads. But take it through a couple of corners and I was surprised. This actually has very decent body control. I mean, it's not a fun car to drive in any way or any measure or form, but it does keep you in control. This is a very safe and capable SUV to be driven day in and day out through all kinds of roads. It's pretty impressive how far BYD has come in just a short span of 3 years. If this is the level of jump they can have in 3 years, man, a new BYD in another 3 to 5 years is a scary thought. The level of composure shown by the suspension, it really holds up even at higher speeds, even taken up to highway speeds and slightly beyond in our, usually very bumpy and undulated highways. The rear of the car stays really planted. You can't say the same thing with a Dolphin or Atto 3. Above 100 kilometers per hour, you'll have the rear bouncing up and down, and rear passengers will complain every chance they get. This one, yeah, like I said, miles better. Another thing that's worth a quick mention is the braking system. Here is actually very good and an improvement over previous BYD cars as well. The way it transitions between its brake regen system and the physical brakes is done very smoothly. It feels natural as well. Now hopefully this will continue feeling this good the more you drive the car, because in my Dolphin it started off pretty good, but as you put on more miles and you wear down on the brake pads, the transition became a little bit more jarring. Hopefully that doesn't happen with this one as well, I hope. What's not great though is something I've mentioned earlier, the tires. We get the Westlake SU318, whatever it is, and this is actually a highway terrain, somewhat off-road tires. It even has the M+S logo, meaning it's also made for mud and snow. If that doesn't show that this is a tire that doesn't fit our climate, I don't know what is. In most parts of Europe, this Atto 2 is supplied with a much better set of Hankook Ion EV tires. But here in Southeast Asia, we get these nonsense Westlake tires instead. This specific tire model, the SU318, whatever it's called, is also available in different brands. It can have the same model with the same tread pattern as a Westlake, or as a Chaoyang, or as a Good Ride. Yeah, it's not a good tire at all. To be fair to these tires, it's not quite as bad as the basic Linglongs I've experienced in the Dolphin. At the very least, these tires are fairly quiet out on the highways. They feel fairly soft as well, quite quiet on the ride comfort aspect. But in terms of wet grip and wet braking especially, yeah, these tires are hopeless. If you do buy the Atto 2, please change the tires to better ones. That's exactly what I did with my own Dolphin. I took delivery of the car and drove straight to the nearest tire shop, changed it to a set of Michelins. Now, I don't mean that you have to change it to a good expensive set of tires, but just any decent acceptable brands will do. Next, let's move on to Refinement. I've already said the tire roar within this cabin is fairly muted. You don't really hear as much of it as in, say, a Dolphin from before, or even the Atto 3. But in terms of wind noise, it's not very good. Even when you're cruising around at 70, 80, 90 kilometers per hour, there's quite a fair bit of wind noise coming in from the right side, the driver's side over here. As you go higher, nearer towards the speed limit or even beyond that, it gets very loud, extremely annoying. So clearly this car is more designed towards being a city car rather than a long distance highway kind of car. Lastly, let's have a quick mention of this car's ADAS or Active Driver Assist system. And again, sadly for BYD, it's not very good. It does have a level 2 semi-autonomous driving or intelligent cruise control, but it's very heavy-handed. It will tug the steering wheel, it will mash on the brakes, it will press the throttle really hard. It feels like a semi-autonomous driving feature from, say, 5 years ago. It's very heavy-handed, its inputs are very abrupt, it's not smooth or natural at all. So yeah, most of the time you turn it on, but you'll get annoyed after a while and then you'll decide to drive yourself. One more weird thing that this car does not have is the lack of any form of a blind spot monitor. That's usually the first form of ADAS that any car brand would look to install. But here it's got a full level 2 semi-autonomous driving, lane change, auto this, auto that, but it doesn't have a basic blind spot monitor. That is baffling. It's really strange that BYD has taken this feature off the Malaysian market. I do hope that they'll add that back on in a future update. So there you go guys, that's my full review of the new BYD Atto 2 here in Malaysia. Now in short, I think it is a fabulous starter EV and one that you should at least consider if you're looking for your first EV here in Malaysia. Now it may not look all that exciting from the outside or even the inside, but if you can look past that, this really offers the full complete package. It's more than fast enough, it is very comfortable, its handling is pretty decent, and its range is very good for this price class. This, like I mentioned earlier, is among the very few EVs that I found it very easy to match or even exceed its WLTP range claim. Having driven this car, I think both the Proton eMas 5 and the Perodua EV will have their work cut out for them, and they'll have a very hard time matching this car in terms of overall appeal and especially in terms of value. We will find out in the next few months, of course, but right in the here and now, this is an excellent compact electric SUV. I am thoroughly impressed by this one. So guys, do you agree or disagree with my review? Do let me know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching everyone, and stay safe.